The Pirates managed to finally break the streak and score 5 runs, but they still own a share of one of the worst offensive attacks in the history of the game. I say we celebrate it. Next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan, and today we're going to talk about the Pirates' share in this dubious record and why I think we should celebrate it with everything we've got. I want to talk a bit today about the new policy opening the door for players like Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson to potentially get into the Hall of Fame, and we'll wrap up talking about the Pirates' bullpen as it's currently constructed. Pittsburgh Pirates tied the all-time MLB record for consecutive games with 4 runs or fewer with 26 games. They had previously tied the record, and it was held by the 1931 Boston Braves and the 1969 California Angels. So we remain tied because the Pirates broke the spell last night and scored 5 runs, a couple in garbage time, to end up losing 8-5. But regardless, they cracked that 5-run threshold that we had so anticipated happening at some point. I think we should make a ridiculous celebration of it. Let's never forget what happened here. Let's never forget how inept this offense was. I'm talking, I want a plaque on the Hall of Honor, the Pirates Hall of Honor. I want a plaque of Ben Cherington and Andy Haynes and whoever else you want, Derek Shelton. Throw all of them in and put that bust up on the wall, and let's celebrate that ineptitude forever. Let's never forget it. Let's never let Bob forget it. Let's remind ourselves all the time of what a great record this is that this team has achieved. I'm being facetious, of course, but we have to, in my mind, not let this go as something that just happened. Historically bad. Not just bad, not just underwhelming, this offense has been. Historically bad. Provably historically bad. Sure, this is like a niche thing that you can look into. Somebody had to dig into this and figure out how long it had been that a team had scored no more than 4 runs in a game and look for that specific set to go out and target. And yes, that's what ineptitude brings about, is new ways to display it. But we've watched this offense too, haven't we? We've watched a terrible offense do terrible things for this entire season. We've watched them struggle with runners in scoring position. I'm sure there's some dubious record that they're on the cusp of for that as well. The run differential we could talk about that they've racked up in these 6 years is probably ridiculous and probably close to the worst ever. There's so many things like that that I think we as fans, maybe we should dig into them more. Maybe we should. Maybe we should start making shirts that list off on the back like a concert tee all of the terrible records for offense that this team has set under this GM. Because I don't want this bad period of Pirates baseball to just go away and hope that it changes. I want to point out everything that they have done wrong. I want to point out that they brought a lot of this on themselves. I want to make sure that the connection is there between bringing in a guy like Tommy Pham and Adam Frazier and expecting good things to happen to your offense. I mean, those sorts of things we can't just allow to be excused away because they ended up shattering this record finally. Just because the streak is over, I don't want to pretend like it didn't happen. I don't want it to be forgotten. I want us to talk about it. I want the team to talk about it. I want the team to have to talk about it. I want it brought up. The news media does a good job of making sure that they rub bad things in the Pirates' face. Don't get me wrong. But I think we need to be even more insane than that. I think we need to be very in their face. More than Bob sells. I'd love to see t-shirts that say 26 games of offensive futility, 2025. Things like that. I want to see a focus on really, really hammering home that it's not okay to be one of the worst performing teams in the game for that long. See, a rebuild is one thing. A rebuild is something that people in this market and other small markets are very, very used to going through. I don't want to say that we don't mind it, because I don't think anybody enjoys losing, and I don't think anybody enjoys going into a season thinking that you're going to lose or thinking that your team probably should lose because you can tell they don't have the talent. But I think we'd all have and will accept it for a couple seasons if we know that we're going to get 3 or 4 good ones after. We're just not getting that payoff right yet. We're not. I think the next GM is probably set up better than I think we're giving them credit for. Like Spencer Horwitz, I think, is going to be a lasting contributor here on this team, and I like what I see so far. And ultimately, at some point, Ben Cherington's going to get credit for that. But it doesn't have to be something that whitewashes what we dealt with in the process, because 6 years is way too long to be where we're at right now. You should at least have a team that is self-sustaining at 500. You should at least have a team that can score enough runs to support a decent pitching staff that you've put together. They haven't. And I want to hammer them on it. Not that we don't talk about this stuff on the show on a daily basis. How many times have I done one of my post-game videos and I'm just like, it's frustrating. They don't hit. Boy, they pitched really great tonight, but only 1 run. Boy, they pitched great tonight, but 8th shutout of the season. That stuff is all cool. I want to do more of these adding up numbers and seeing just how bad they are stacked up. You can expect me to do that over the next couple weeks. I don't think this 4 runs or fewer thing is the only sign of futility we'll find. I'm going to dig. And I really want to come up with that concert tee with you. And when I do, we're going to do, I think, a top 10 signs of offensive futility from Ben Cherington. And I'm going to design a t-shirt. It's going to be great. I'll get my friends over at Shop Yins to write it up. But like, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. Offensive futility, I want to hammer them with it. Hammer, hammer, hammer. This team used to be called the Lumber Company. And while I'm fine with changing the identity to being a pitching unit, it doesn't have to come at this kind of a sacrifice. I don't have to deal with having no bats whatsoever in order to have a good pitching staff. And we're going to talk later in the show about an aspect of the pitching staff that suddenly doesn't look anywhere near as nice as it did. When we come back, let's talk about the Hall of Fame a little bit. I think it's interesting, some of the changes they've made. And heading into the weekend, why not do a thought piece, something that we can really think about a little bit? The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's the game-winning shot or breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to fanduel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Let's talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame. In a recent decision, MLB removed Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson and 16 other deceased individuals from its permanently ineligible list, allowing them to be considered for induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame. This means they're now eligible for election by the Classic Era Baseball Committee in December of 2027, with potential enshrinement in 2028 if they receive the necessary votes. So, man, this got me thinking about a lot of stuff because I don't have a personal connection to Pete Rose or Shoeless Joe Jackson, but I'm a baseball fan, have been, for my whole life. And I know my grandparents felt Pete Rose was the best hitter that ever lived. And I know a lot of baseball fans felt that Pete Rose was the best hitter that ever lived. The best hitter that I ever saw was Barry Bonds. And my first thought was, okay, so when Barry Bonds dies, is he eligible? Is that what we're going with here? Is he ineligible because of the steroid controversy? But then once he dies, we're going to go ahead and open the door and let him in? I'm wondering. I don't know if that's how it works. And I go back and I look at somebody like Pete Rose, and here's my thing. Being eligible is one thing, but baseball still has the character clause built into their Hall of Fame prerequisites. I don't know how that squares with Pete Rose. He gambled on the game. Okay. And I think we all know that's wrong, but the game is like at least half funded by gambling ads at this point, right? I mean, heck, I even just did one for FanDuel. So how bad can it be? We're obviously accepting gambling. So it would seem to me like you'd turn a blind eye to that. Now, if you really want to take the character clause further, well, Pete Rose has some other blemishes too, doesn't he? Like there's some underage girls and things like that. Listen, I'm not trying to judge him, and to be blunt, I haven't investigated them. Pete Rose is not my cause. I could care less. But does the character clause still stand for that sort of thing? I would think it would. I would think just because he's eligible doesn't mean he's getting in. I would think there's probably still going to be all the same hangups to him ever getting in. Shoeless Joe, maybe there's something there. And the reason I think with Shoeless Joe is because there's kind of a lot of evidence, first of all, that he did an excellent job in that World Series. So I'm not 100% sure that you can really tie him directly to any kind of cheating. The movie 8 Men Out was a movie, so I don't want to pretend that it was historical fact. I have read some books on it. I've paid attention. Part of me really does think Shoeless Joe should get in. But I think if you go back and you look at other guys that did things that were untoward, like Ty Cobb and whatnot, if he's in, it's really hard for me to say Pete Rose shouldn't be. Basically, if it's hey, you were an a-hole, well, I think a lot of guys are a-holes, on or off the field. And I don't know that I definitely would want to make that the final determination. Maybe it should really just be nothing more than you did this on a baseball field. It's better than anybody's ever done. Let's go ahead and put that in the Hall of Fame. And in many ways, Pete Rose already was in the Hall of Fame. His collectibles were in there. His records were in there. So it's not as though those don't exist or you couldn't celebrate the guy. I just don't know how I feel about this. The more I think about it, I think I'm thinking myself into circles when I start talking about this Hall of Fame stuff. There's such a long list, like Mark McGwire, all those home runs. He and Sammy Sosa, you can talk about it being steroid fueled if you want to. I'm sure it was. They were both hulking masses of humanity. In fact, I remember even during that run, or maybe it was after that run, I'm just conflating it in my head. I'd have to go back and look. But I remember there was like a bat corking incident with Sammy Sosa at the same time as the steroid thing, and he got to keep playing and nobody said a word, and we kept watching this home run race, and it kind of saved the game after the big strike lockout situation. I'm not sure how you don't celebrate that in the Hall of Fame. That race was kind of like something that brought a lot of people back to the game that weren't going to come back. And at the end of the day, can you honestly say that wasn't good for the game? It's hard. It's hard for me to say that that wasn't good for the game. I don't like that it's tarnished. I don't like that it happened. One of my favorite players ever, Roger Clemens. I I don't know how the hell Roger Clemens isn't in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's one of the best pitchers ever. He was my Nolan Ryan, if you think about it. Like Nolan Ryan was huge, and he was still pitching when I was young, and I watched him, and then, I appreciated him and everything, but he wasn't the Nolan Ryan that a lot of people grew up with. Well, Roger Clemens was mine. I loved Roger Clemens. I think I had 32 of his rookie cards from different brands across. I bought them at flea markets and collected them. I still have them. I love the Rocket. And for him to not be in the Hall of Fame, man, it feels like a little bit of my childhood is cheated. Again, do I agree with what he did? If he did steroids? No. I don't. But at the same time, I felt like so many guys were doing it then. What if instead of steroids, we had decided that amphetamines were a performance enhancing drug? I believe they are. You get a little speed before a game, and maybe you can do things a little faster, react a little quicker. I don't know how it works. I've never tried it. But I would think like the 70s, there'd be an awful lot of people in some trouble there, right? I mean, I think you would probably be talking about some current Hall of Famers that would have to come out because they were involved in taking the greenies and whatnot that our Pittsburgh Pirates were very directly involved in back then. So how far do you really want to take that character? Does it just have to be the right scandal? I'm not sure that's right. I'm not sure that's the way to handle it. Maybe the simplest thing to do is to just judge what happens on the baseball field and not try to judge what people did in their personal lives or their character. I mean, I think that way, but at the same time, let's say O.J. Simpson just now came up for eligibility in the NFL Hall of Fame. Well, you wouldn't want him in there, right? But he's already in because he got in long before he turned into whatever O.J. Simpson turned into. You don't go and take him out. I wonder what baseball would do. It seems to me like bad stuff has come out about a lot of players that have been in the Hall of Fame, and we tend to just kind of forget about that or act like it's okay because they were old, or that was so long ago. Things were different back then. Like I hear Ty Cobb was a racist. Well, yeah, most everybody was back when Ty Cobb was playing baseball. And I hate to be that way, but the country was racist. So it's very hard for me to single out one guy for doing terrible things. Everybody he knew was probably doing terrible things. When you think about what Jackie Robinson went through coming into this game, and the few people that did stand by his side on the field and like make a concerted effort to make him feel welcome, and the hundreds of silent players that did nothing but stand there and help heckle him, or in general didn't support him being on that field. There's an awful lot of Hall of Famers in that list of guys you'd be talking about. I think when you start trying to play morality police with Hall of Fames, you tend to leave people out that probably shouldn't be, and you probably include people that you're going to have to make an exception for, whether you want to admit it or not. The more they mess with things like this, the more I wonder how sustainable the actual Hall of Fame is. Because if it's no longer about just the best players in the game, which it isn't anymore, I kind of wonder what it's about. And we've cut out an entire generation of baseball fans who can't see many of the best players that played during their era of growing up. Barry Bonds, Rafael Palmeiro, Roger Clemens. I could go on and on and on. Those are the ones we grew up with. No offense to Ted Williams. I want to go see about Ted Williams and everything. But I want to see about what I grew up with too. And in many ways, your punishment for them is actually punishing me. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about the Pirates bullpen as it's currently constructed, because I'm having a real hard time making sense of some of the decisions they've made to staff it at this point. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Quick bullpen conversation here, because I think we're seeing that it's a weaker unit than it was even at the beginning of the season, or at least the perception of it is. Right now, as currently we're constructed, David Bednar, Dennis Santana, Caleb Ferguson, Ryan Borucki, and Chase Shugart are probably your five that you really kind of count on the most. Now, I know Chase Shugart just had a blow up last night, but he's been really, really good. So I'm not going to dismiss everything he's done because he had one bad outing. I think he's been a really nice addition to this bullpen. Now, you go beyond that, you get to Tanner Rainey, who I'm not 100% sure what we've really seen from him yet. I don't know that I would consider him somebody trusted. I think he's somebody with an interesting pitch that honestly I don't see him throw enough. If Tanner Rainey isn't throwing that sweeper, then Tanner Rainey's not interesting to me. I need that sweeper to be like when Kyle Crick was good. That's all he threw, that and a fastball to kind of keep people off of it. But I need Tanner Rainey to feature that sweeper a lot more. I'm not seeing that. And to me, that's the only thing that makes him interesting. If he's not going to throw that, they can get rid of him any day. Now they made a 40-man move and it was just putting Nick Gonzalez on the 60-day, which is pretty much a paper decision, but to get Isaac Mattson up here. And I have not been impressed by Isaac Mattson. I don't really understand what we're doing with Isaac Mattson. The one thing I do like about him, and the reason that it's cool to put him on the 40-man, he does have a couple options, and I have no problem with keeping some guys that are optionable there. And somebody who started out okay and has kind of fallen off to me is Joey Wentz. I think I'm really finding the end of his usefulness. Pirates obviously have some injury concerns here. Here's some of the better things I think they've lost. Colin Holderman's been bad. So his injury is probably welcome news to you. But that's a guy that if the thumb has been a problem for a while that he's struggling with, let's say it's a real injury, first of all, because the first supposition is that it's not. But he is going to see a specialist in Arizona. So my assumption is he actually does have an injury here. Well, if his thumb not being able to grip the baseball the right way has been a problem all year. First of all, Pirates, what were you doing running him out there? And second, or maybe Colin, why didn't you say something? Could be one or either of those, really. But Colin Holderman is still a talent. He's still a guy that has stuff that I want to see. I just don't want to force him back here from the IL. Justin Lawrence was a big miss. Still on the injured list, 60-day IL. Not really sure if we're going to see him back this year or not. But Justin Lawrence, he was great for a minute there. Tim Meza, injured as well. I don't think we really got to see an awful lot of Tim Meza, but I felt like he was a right-handed Baraki type where we were going to be happy we had him, and Dowry Moretta is about to come back. So that's an interesting infusion. We could have Dowry Moretta back pretty soon. I don't know who he'd go for, maybe Matson or Joey Wentz. But when you really start looking at like the relief pitcher options that they have in the minor leagues, that's when I kind of get to a weird point where I start thinking about these. I start thinking about what they actually have in the starting rotation, even as far as AAA goes, and who might come up here. For instance, Kyle Nicholas has been down for a while. I wonder when he comes back. Hunter Stratton, another guy on the 40-man that they could use. Johan Ramirez, we've seen them use over the years over and over again. Ryder Ryan's still down there. He's got some usefulness. Eddie Yean looked impressive in spring training. I could see him coming up here and contributing. But one of the most, at least important arms, I think, right now, as far as like having some fluctuation, is Carmen Mlodzinski. And he got sent down. They want him to continue starting. I get it. I talked a little bit on yesterday's show about why that might be. There could be some trade value there. You could use him to move as part of a package. You could use him as a starting pitcher to get yourself a decent return. I mean, Spencer Horwitz just cost the Pirates a starter, not a lot unlike Carmen Mlodzinski, right? Got a little bit of starting experience, a little bit of bullpen experience, great stuff. Looks like you could turn this roughly shaped piece of clay into a beautiful statue if you really tried. There could be some real value there, and you might be able to hold on to somebody else like a Thomas Harrington or a Bubba Chandler or whatever if you do something like that. Braxton Ashcraft is another guy I think could wind up in the bullpen, and that could help. We've already seen them use Mike Burrows in the bullpen, or at least call him up to sit him in the bullpen. Now they have him starting, but that's an option too. And another veteran that they brought in here on an NRI, Carson Fulmer, has been doing a great job in AAA as far as holding down the rotation as the veteran presence there. But he's a guy who's got bullpen experience too, and might not be a bad idea to call up here and see if you can get a little bit of stability. I don't hate the bullpen. I think they have enough to get through a night for the most part, but they're starting to get tired, and I think they have a lot of guys that do the same thing. I really think we're down right now to a 5-man bullpen as far as like guys you trust. And that's what sucks. You start using like guys like Tanner Rainey, Isaac Matson, and Joey Wentz, you're not going to win a lot of games. I think you're going to end up losing a lot of contests and not holding them close. And the back end with this closing role, they're using Dennis Santana and David Bednar. I've already expressed to you guys that I think David Bednar needs traded this year. I don't care who does it. It has to be done. I don't want him making $8 million in arbitration. Not here. And I don't want to extend him. I just want him to go. I want to trade him for somebody. I think you could get something useful for him. At least I think you could pull off like a AAA bat. And the Pirates could use that even if it isn't great. If only because, I mean, like they need like outfielders. Just get a nice outfielder that's stuck in someone's AAA. I think you could probably do that for David Bednar at the deadline. Be smart about it, but trade David Bednar and don't wait. If it comes up before the deadline, do it. Where is this team going? and you've already got Dennis Santana here. They need to start using these pieces. When you start talking about the guys that this team has to move, Adam Frazier, and keep in mind, when I name these guys off, I don't mean like I think you're going to get trade return for them. I just mean they're gone after this year. Adam Frazier, Tommy Pham, Ryan Borucki, David Bednar. I mean, like, that's enough to get started with. Start moving guys. Like, do it when it comes up. Somebody needs help in their bullpen, do it. This team needs to start realizing that this isn't about this year anymore. And they've got younger options that they need to bring up here and use anyway and find spots for. That's when you start clearing the way. Tommy Pham, to me, is on track to get cut here at some point. I think what you're seeing right now is their last-ditch attempt to get anything out of him, playing him a couple games here and there, and sitting Canario, who has started to struggle just a bit to make contact. But I think we're going to see Canario back in there probably starting tonight after Tommy Pham got a couple starts in a row. It does seem that Don Kelly does have that philosophy of I at least need to see guys a couple days in a row and give them a chance to hit before I make a decision. And it just seems to me like since he hasn't played Tommy Pham much at all, now he is. I think you're starting to see him say, okay, let me see. And then I think we're going to see a decision sooner than later because this team, even this team, isn't going to hold on to Tommy Pham thinking they can trade him. They know better. You just can't. There's no value there. Nobody's going to do it. In fact, he'd probably clear waivers and you're still stuck paying him. But that is the way it is. The bullpen will come around, I think, especially as the injury situation starts to clear up and you start to see some of these starters matriculate their way back to the bullpen because there's no room. Johan Oviedo might prompt some things to change like that as well when he comes back. Maybe he'll even start in the bullpen. We'll see. Interesting times to be a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. I know that it sucks to be talking about some of the stuff we are, but all the way back to segment 1, celebrate. Celebrate that crappy record. Rub it in their noses like a dog that crapped on your carpet. That's what they deserve. It's what they need. They need us to not have short memories here, if you ask me. Make sure you subscribe, like the show. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. I am still going to do a show on Memorial Day. I just want you to know that. So make sure it'll be here in the morning for you waiting. So make sure you join me for another Locked On Pirates. Thanks, everybody.